The first to die this winter was Anneliese, the baker's daughter. Her mother found her before dawn, pale as linen, eyes frozen wide open, lips still parted as if to whisper a final word. Her body was cold, but her chest was sunken, pressed inward as though something small and heavy had sat upon her heart and drank its fill. The priest said it was the work of bad air, a sickness of the lungs, perhaps. The blacksmith swore he heard a scream through the walls just before the bells tolled. And the old women only muttered a single word through their cracked teeth. Alp. By midday, fear had settled like snow. The sky was the color of ash. Chickens refused to cluck. Even the dogs would not bark. And as twilight bled into the frost, 6 souls gathered in the square, drawn not by faith, but by dread. Brother Alaric stood first among them, clutching his rosary with shaking hands, eyes rimmed red from sleepless nights. Beside him, Sir Conrad Vos leaned on his sword, the steel dim beneath the grey light, a knight stripped of cause but not arrogance. Lady Isabel Thorne arrived wrapped in furs too fine for this place, her gaze sharp and cold as coin. Lena the herbalist kept close to the shadows, clutching a pouch of dried herbs, her breath a pale mist of fear. Tomas, the stable boy, barely 14, held a lantern that trembled more than his hands. And at the edge stood Elric of Dornfeld, the scribe, quill tucked behind his ear, ink still under his nails, sent to record a miracle of sleep. Alaric's voice broke the silence first. The demon takes the breath of sleepers. None must close their eyes tonight. We will hold vigil in the chapel till dawn. Conrad snorted, a cruel sound in the frozen air. Demons? You'd blame the wind if it bit you. It's sickness, monk. Fear breeds delusion. Lady Isabel lifted her chin. Call it what you will, Sir Knight. I've buried 2 servants already. If prayer keeps me breathing, then let the monk lead. Lena stepped forward timidly. The old stories say the Alp comes for guilt, for those who have wronged the innocent. Conrad's eyes flashed. Then we've all earned its visit. Tomas flinched, clutching his lantern tighter. My mother said if you keep the candles lit, it can't cross the flame. Alaric nodded solemnly. Then light every candle you have. We meet in the chapel before dark. That was when they heard it, the soft, uneven rhythm of hooves. From the northern path came a horse, limping, breath clouding the dusk. Upon its back rode a man cloaked in black, his face hidden beneath a hood. He did not greet them. He did not ask to enter. He simply said, "Lock your doors. The thing that feeds in your sleep is no sickness. It is hunger made flesh." Alaric stepped forward. "And who are you to speak of demons?" The stranger's voice was low, frayed like a dying ember. "A man who has seen one, and lived long enough to regret it." Conrad's hand went to his sword. "We take no strangers into holy ground." He could be the plague himself. But Lady Isabel cut him off, voice sharp. "Then let the stranger in. If he lies, God will reveal it. If he speaks truth, we'll need him." Lena murmured a prayer. Tomas's lantern flickered. And though none would admit it, not one among them wished to face the night alone. Alaric bowed his head. "So be it. To the chapel, then. Till dawn breaks, none shall sleep." The stranger dismounted, snow sliding from his cloak. As he joined their circle, the air grew colder still. And somewhere high above the chapel bell, muffled by distance and storm, came a sound, faint, wet, and rhythmic. It sounded like breathing. But it wasn't coming from any living throat. They thought the night would protect them if they stayed awake. They were wrong. The Alp does not wait for dreams. It brings its own. Night fell like a closing hand over Eichenwald. The wind had teeth. Candles guttered in windows as if afraid of their own flame. Inside the chapel, 7 souls gathered, not out of faith, but out of fear. The air smelled of damp wood and old prayers. Frost crawled across the altar like veins of glass. Brother Alaric knelt before the crucifix, whispering psalms that no one dared echo. His voice was hoarse, cracked by years and guilt. Sir Conrad leaned against the door, armor dull with rust, sword across his knees. His eyes never left the shadows between the pews. Lady Isabel clutched a gold locket, the same one she'd stolen from her husband's corpse, as if its weight could buy her mercy. Lena the herbalist spread bundles of sage and iron nails along the floor, muttering charms beneath her breath. The boy, Tomas, huddled near the fire, watching every face like a cornered animal. And in the farthest pew sat the stranger, silent, still, his hood drawn low. The candle beside him refused to burn straight, its flame bent away from his breath. Alaric stood, raising his hand for silence. "We will not sleep. Not till sunrise. Keep your eyes open, and your hearts pure." Sir Conrad scoffed. "Demons are for sermons, not soldiers. What killed the girl was sickness, nothing more." The monk turned to him slowly. "Then why does the frost form on her lips, and not yours?" Conrad said nothing. Somewhere outside, a door slammed in the wind, yet no one had moved to close it. Lena flinched. Did anyone else hear that? The stranger's head tilted. "It's not the wind. The Alp moves through what breath it steals. Once it feeds, it lingers." Alaric crossed himself. "Then it will find none here. We are awake." Valen's voice was almost kind when he answered. "Awake does not mean safe." The church bell above them shuddered once, a low, dying groan. The candles flickered blue. Lady Isabel gasped. "It's here." No one spoke. The air grew thick, heavy, wet with something unseen. Tomas tried to breathe, and for a moment, could not. From the rafters came a sound, slow, rhythmic, almost tender. Breathing. Then silence. A single candle sputtered and died. When light returned, frost bloomed across the chapel's walls, forming the shape of a hand pressed against the wood. Small, delicate, and impossibly high. Brother Alaric fell to his knees. "Lord have mercy." The stranger only smiled beneath his hood. "Mercy," he whispered. "Hasn't breathed here in years." The bell tolls backward. They thought faith could keep the night at bay. But the Alp does not fear prayers. The storm had quieted to a whisper against the chapel glass. The monk crouched near the altar, unwrapping a bundle of linen. From within, he drew a heavy black tome bound in cracked leather. The iron clasp was etched with rust and prayers. Elric frowned. "You carry scripture?" Alaric hesitated. "Not scripture," he murmured. "A ledger." He set the book upon the altar. The candles bent inward as though drawn by it. Elric stepped closer. "What ledger keeps the dead awake at night?" "The Liber Tenebrarum," Alaric said. "The Book of Demons. Written by the first priest of Eichenwald to trap what words could not bless." He brushed his fingers over the cover, whispering something under his breath. The book shuddered faintly, as if exhaling. Elric swallowed. "You think the Alp is in there?" "No," said the monk. "But its name is, and every soul who ever drew it near." He opened the clasp with a metallic sigh. The parchment within was thick, blackened by soot and years. Each page bore a name written in brown, fading ink. "Every sinner who dreamt of the Alp," Alaric said. "And everyone who tried to deny it after." Elric leaned in, his voice barely audible. "How does a name keep a demon bound?" "It doesn't," Alaric answered. "It reminds the living who to blame when prayers fail." He turned another page. The ink looked fresh. Elric's eyes narrowed. "You've been writing in it." "I haven't touched this book in 20 winters," Alaric whispered. His hand trembled. "Yet look." There, on the newest page, a blank line shimmered faintly in the candlelight, as if waiting. "It's writing itself," Elric breathed. The monk shut the book with a sharp crack. "Say nothing," he warned. "If the others see it, they'll think it proof. And fear is the only breath it needs." Elric nodded. though his pulse thundered. Then what do we do? Alaric's gaze drifted toward the stranger sitting alone at the far pew, eyes closed, head bowed. We watch him, the monk said softly. And if the book writes again, we run. The wind moaned outside, low, human, pleading. And for a heartbeat, both men thought they heard it whisper a name neither of them had spoken. Valen. The monk prayed. The knight sharpened his sword. And the scribe wrote, though his ink froze on the page. They said if one could outlast sleep, the Alp could not claim them. But fatigue is a crueler demon than faith. It whispers of pillows and peace, promising mercy where none exists. Brother Alaric's voice broke the silence first. It takes those who dream, he murmured. But sin calls it faster. Lady Isabel laughed softly, her rings catching the candlelight like tiny flames. Then half this village would be dead already. The knight, Sir Conrad, spat on the floorboards. Superstition. I've slain men and worse. I'll not tremble over a bedtime tale. But his hand wouldn't leave the hilt of his sword. From the back of the chapel, Lena the herbalist whispered a prayer not meant for Christian ears. Her charms clinked in her satchel, herbs bound in red thread, a pagan ward against breath-stealers. And then, the boy Tomas, small, silent, forgotten in the corner, raised his head. Someone's outside, he said. All turned. Through the frost-glazed window, the shape of a man stood in the snow, motionless, faceless, watching. The candles flickered blue. The monk clutched his book. Before the knight could move, the chapel bell began to toll. Not once, not twice, but backward. Each peal struck like a heartbeat in reverse, drawing something unseen closer with every chime. Outside, the snow shifted. A long dent pressed into it, as though a body had lain there and risen. Then came the sound. Not wind, not storm. Breathing. Slow, heavy, wet, pressing against the walls, as if the night itself had lungs. Isabel gasped. The frost on the window bloomed inward, spreading across the glass like veins. And then, the bell stopped. The door creaked open, inch by inch. No one moved. No one dared breathe. No one spoke for a long while. They listened instead. To the wood groaning. To the drip of melted wax. To the heartbeat of silence itself. Elric's hand trembled as he wrote. The ink bled down the parchment in thin, black veins. His candle guttered and hissed. And in the half-light, he thought he saw something move. A figure behind his reflection in the ink. He blinked. It was gone. Brother Alaric clutched his prayer beads so tightly that his knuckles split. He whispered the psalms of exorcism under his breath, but the words came back twisted, syllables backward, prayers that bit like teeth. Faith, he muttered, shaking. Only faith will keep it out. The knight laughed from his bench, the sound low and cracked. Faith didn't keep your baker's girl alive. The monk's eyes lifted, hollow. And steel won't keep you breathing, Sir Conrad. The air grew colder. Even the flames seemed afraid to burn. Then Lena screamed. Her satchel had spilled open. The dried herbs writhed across the floor like green worms, twisting together into a shape, a hand, thin and long, clutching for her throat. She crushed them beneath her boot, gasping, the scent of rot filling the chapel. It's using our fears, she choked. It listens when we speak of it. Isabel rose, her furs glinting with frost. Then stop speaking, girl. But her voice trembled, betraying her. When she turned, her reflection in the chapel's silver basin did not turn with her. It smiled, a cold, unnatural curve, and exhaled fog into the air. The boy Tomas whimpered. He pointed toward the rafters. There, above them, shadows were moving. Not walking. Not crawling. Swaying. As though unseen bodies hung from the beams, twitching in silent rhythm. The bell outside gave one broken toll. The shadows vanished. Only the echo of breathing remained, soft, measured, and close. Elric looked around. "Where's the stranger?" No one answered. The door to the chapel was ajar, and through the crack, a single trail of frost led inward, to the center of the room. Sir Conrad's hand went to his sword before his mind could find words. He scanned the pews, the altar, the half-lit corners. Nothing. Lady Isabel hissed through her teeth. "I knew it. That man was never one of us." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but anger trying to disguise it. Brother Alaric muttered a prayer, clutching the cross against his chest. "Do not speak blasphemy. Perhaps he went to hunt it, to end this nightmare." Conrad barked a laugh, cold and cruel. "Hunt it? You fool. He was the nightmare." Lena flinched. "Stop shouting," she whispered. "You'll wake it, whatever it is." But Conrad wouldn't stop. "I said it from the start. The stranger walks in at the hour of death, speaks of demons, and we invite him in like fools." Isabel turned on him sharply. "And what would you have done, Sir Conrad? Leave him to freeze outside, so you could polish your guilt in peace?" The knight's face hardened. "Mind your tongue, widow, or I'll—" "Elric, enough." Alaric snapped suddenly, realizing too late he'd spoken the wrong name. His mind was unraveling. His rosary snapped in his grip, beads scattering like teeth across the stone floor. Tomas whimpered again. The door. It wasn't open before. All heads turned. The heavy oak door, the one they had barred themselves, now hung half open, the iron bolt still resting in its cradle. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then the arguments began anew, hushed, furious, desperate. Isabel insisted she had checked it herself. Conrad swore he had heard the latch click. Lena said she had felt it, the wood pulsing like a heartbeat beneath her hand. Blame passed between them like a curse. Finally, Elric moved to the threshold, candle trembling in his grasp. He reached for the door, forcing it shut. The hinges moaned like something in pain. He slid the bolt across with a dull, final sound. The room fell into silence. Only Tomas's breathing could be heard, quick, frightened gasps echoing through the pews. Brother Alaric murmured, "We stay together. No one moves until dawn." But dawn, they would later learn, had stopped moving hours ago. Morning never came. The candles burned to stumps, bleeding wax across the chapel floor like slow, white tears. And still, no dawn touched the windows. Only frost. Only shadow. Brother Alaric knelt before the altar, hands clasped, head bowed. His breath rose in small, frantic clouds. He prayed to a God who had stopped listening hours ago. Elric watched him from the pew, pen idle in hand. The monk's words no longer sounded like Latin. They cracked and twisted, syllables splitting like frozen wood. Sir Conrad paced behind him, armor whispering in the dark. "Pray louder, monk. Perhaps the heavens are deaf." Alaric did not lift his head. "I prayed once for mercy," he murmured. "And mercy burned." The others turned. Even Isabel paused her trembling hands. The monk's voice grew lower, trembling. "I was young. The bishop said the devil nested in a child's body, a girl who spoke to the dead. They called it exorcism, but I saw her lungs collapse beneath my cross." He looked up then, eyes hollow, shining with frost. "When she died, something left her mouth. Not a spirit. Not smoke. It was breath. And it entered mine." Silence swallowed the chapel. Lena crossed herself the old way, thumb to lips, then to heart. Tomas clung to her sleeve, eyes wide and wet.
Hey, if you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss the next story.
The knight spat again, though the sound shook in his throat. You confess your sins to ghosts now? The monk turned toward him, face pale as parchment. No, Sir Conrad. I confess to the thing that listens. Then, a sound. A faint, wet exhale. The crucifix above the altar began to drip. Not water. Condensation, thick as sweat, running down from Christ's lips. The candles dimmed to blue. Each breath they took came shorter, thinner, as though the air itself were fleeing. Isabel staggered back. It's here. The chapel doors shuddered against a wind that did not howl. It breathed. The flames died. Alaric rose, voice trembling into a whisper. The Alp is not the devil, nor the damned. It is every breath we never confessed, coming back to claim us. A shape moved in the dark. Closer. Heavier. Then the monk's body lifted from the ground, slow, silent, as if an unseen weight had perched upon his chest. The others could only watch. His arms fell limp. His breath spilled from his mouth in a pale mist. And from that mist, faint and human, came a voice, his own, whispering. The air inside the chapel had turned heavy, as though the night itself had decided to stay. Alaric's body lay motionless before the altar, his mouth still open, a thin thread of frost connecting his lips to the air. No one dared close his eyes. Lena knelt beside him, trembling hands clutching her satchel. She whispered charms in the old tongue, the one her mother taught her, the one the church forbade. Lady Isabel stood over her, furs brushing the floor like black wings. Put that filth away, Isabel hissed. He's dead. Your pagan babble will not bring him back. Lena looked up, eyes wide and raw. And your gold won't buy your breath when it comes for you. The widow's lips curled. Careful, witch. I've seen your kind burn for less. The knight leaned against the pew, armor clinking. Let her speak. Whatever devil she serves, perhaps it'll listen faster than ours. Lena's hand shook as she drew a circle in ash, placing 3 herbs within, wolfsbane, rosemary, rue. She murmured to the air. If it must feed, let it feed not on me. The flames on the altar guttered, then steadied, blue, not gold. Isabel stepped back. What did you do? Lena looked down. Her breath fogged the air, but only hers. The others did not. The knight frowned, reaching for his sword. Where's the boy? Tomas was gone. Only his small footprints trailed toward the confessional. The knight and the scribe followed, the widow close behind. They found the door slightly ajar. Inside, the air shimmered like heat above a forge. Tomas knelt before the screen, eyes half closed, whispering. It said it could bring them back. Elric's voice shook. Who, Tomas? Who did it promise? The boy's lips quivered. My mother. My father. They said they burned for sins they never spoke. It said if I breathe deep, I can see them again. He inhaled, sharply, desperately, and the frost on the walls pulled inward toward his mouth. Lena screamed. She lunged forward, dragging him out, his small body shuddering, the air thick with white fog. The confessional door slammed shut on its own. Through the lattice, a face pressed against the wood, not Tomas's. Sunken eyes. Long teeth. Smiling. Isabel staggered back, hand over her heart. What is that? The door creaked open. Nothing inside. Only breath, still hanging in the air like smoke. The widow turned to flee, but something caught her wrist. Her reflection in the silver basin beside her. It moved before she did. Its hand reached out, gripping hers, pulling. Isabel screamed as the surface broke like water. Her rings slipped from her fingers and scattered across the floor, each one fogging with frost. The basin went still. Only her reflection remained, trapped within, still screaming. The monk's corpse twitched once on the floor. Outside, the bell tolled backward again, a single note. They thought gold could guard them, prayers could save them, and charms could deceive it. But they were wrong. They said Sir Conrad never slept. But that night, beneath the chapel's dying candles, even he could not hold his eyes open forever. Steel weighed heavier than sin, and when his head bowed, when the frost crept along the edge of his blade, he fell into a dream so vivid it felt like penance. He stood again upon the desert dunes, endless and red, as they had been during the crusade. The air shimmered with heat, though his breath came out white. Beneath his boots, bones cracked like snow. Around him were the voices of the slaughtered, the mothers, the children, the ones who never carried swords. They cried not for mercy, but for recognition. Their mouths opened, and sand poured out. "You said it was for God," whispered one, faceless and near. "Whose name do you pray to now, knight?" Conrad raised his shield. But the reflection in it was not his own. It was a boy, pale, coughing, his chest crushed inward by invisible hands. The boy's breath fogged the inside of the metal, and the fog began to take shape, 2 red eyes blooming like wounds. "You brought it with you." He dropped the shield. The sand began to move, pulsing, rising. Something crawled beneath it, quick as thought, round as breath. When it broke the surface, it was small, no larger than a cat, but wrong in every way. It climbed his leg, sat on his chest, and pressed down. Conrad gasped awake. The chapel was silent. The others slept in uneasy heaps, their faces pale as snow. But the knight could not move. His chest burned, his lungs refused to fill. He looked down. His armor was full, not with breath, but with blood, dark and glistening, sloshing beneath the plates, dripping through the seams. It smelled of salt and sand. He tried to scream, but only air escaped, cold and thick with frost. The Alp had found his dream, and followed him out. "You can never wake from what you've earned." The bell above the chapel gave a single, hollow note. It rang backward. And outside, the snow turned the color of rust. Elric of Dornfeld had written through plagues, wars and funerals, yet never had words weighed this much. Now, alone in the chapel, he wrote to stay sane. The monk was gone. The knight slept in blood. The others whispered prayers that turned to frost before reaching heaven. He was the last one still recording. Because someone had to remember. He dipped his quill, but the ink was wrong, thicker than before, dark as congealed breath. Still, he wrote, line by line, until his hand began to move without his will. The letters formed words he didn't know. Not Latin. Not prayer. A woman's hand, delicate, looping, one he had seen before. Elric. He froze. The quill hung mid-air. He had burned that name years ago, in plague fire, with the body of his wife. Did you think death ends with silence? I still dream. I still choke. Her voice wasn't in his ears, it came from the page itself. The parchment quivered like a lung. He stumbled back, but the ink crawled, threading from sheet to sheet, spilling onto the floorboards, drawing lines, symbols, a circle. Inside the circle, the ink pooled upward, forming a figure made of breath and shadow. His wife's eyes looked at him, hollow and shimmering. You left me gasping, she said. Now breathe for me. Elric's throat closed. He tried to scream, but only fog left his lips. The quill rose from the floor, pressed itself to his chest, and began to write. When the others awoke to his choking, they found him upright at his desk, still, his eyes open, his pages filled, every inch of his skin carved with words, each line glistening black. The Alp writes in breath, not ink. And as dawn refused to rise, the quill kept scratching, even though the hand that held it was no longer his. Stories do not end when the writer dies. They only change who's holding the quill. By the time the quill stopped moving, the chapel was no longer holy. Elric's body still sat at the table, eyes open, lips parted, as if waiting for a word he'd never say. The others stared at him, trembling, not daring to breathe too loudly. Lady Isabel was the first to speak, voice sharp as splintered glass. "This is her doing," she hissed, pointing at Lena. "The witch. She brought this curse from the forest." Lena clutched her herbs, her fingers blue from cold. "I tried to protect us," she whispered. "I hung the charms, I burned the sage. And still they die." Isabel screamed. "You summoned demons with your dirt and your weeds." The knight's armor lay empty beside them, still dripping. The monk was gone. The scribe was gone. Only 3 remained, the noble, the herbalist, and the orphan boy. And in the far corner, half hidden by shadow, the stranger watched. He revealed his name was Valen. His hood was down now. His eyes glowed faintly red in the dark, like coals that refused to die. "Do not fight," he murmured. "It listens." Isabel spun toward him, wild-eyed. You knew what it was." He smiled, but his shadow on the wall did not move with him. It stayed still, head tilted, breathing separately. Tomas noticed first. "Your shadow," he whispered. "It's—" The boy didn't finish. The shadow turned its head toward him. Panic broke. Isabel grabbed the iron cross from the altar and struck Lena across the face. The herbalist fell, herbs scattering like dying leaves. The candles flared blue, the sign of a lie spoken in fear. Valen stood now, taller somehow. The air bent around him. "Every lie you tell," he said softly, "becomes its breath." The walls began to groan. The frost spread across the floor, reaching their feet. Lena gasped, not from the wound, but from something unseen pressing against her chest. She clawed at her throat, choking on air that wouldn't enter. Tomas screamed her name, but Isabel backed away, clutching the bloodied cross. The boy turned to Valen. "Help her." "I am." The frost climbed Lena's body, sealing her lips shut with ice. Her eyes widened, and a small puff of breath escaped, white, shimmering. It drifted toward Valen, and sank into his lungs. When he exhaled, his voice wasn't one, it was many. "She lied. You all lie. That is how we breathe." The chapel doors blew open, snow rushing in like a scream. Isabel fell to her knees. Tomas wept. And Valen, or what wore his shape, looked upon them as though tasting each fear, each secret, each breath. The Alp does not hunt the guilty. It waits until they prove themselves worthy of it. And somewhere above, the bell tolled backward once more. Another breath claimed. Another truth born. The storm outside had stilled, but the silence it left behind was worse. Snow drifted into the chapel, covering Lena's frozen form like a second shroud. Only 3 remained, Lady Isabel, Tomas, and the stranger called Valen, though by now, none dared call him man. He stood before the altar, head bowed, hands trembling as if in prayer. But the sound he made was not prayer. It was breathing, slow, rhythmic, feeding. Isabel's voice broke the hush. "What are you?" Valen looked up. His eyes glowed red, twin embers behind frost. "You summoned me," he said. "Every fear, every secret, every breath you hoarded was an invitation." Tomas stepped forward, clutching the iron cross he had taken from the floor. "You said you could stop it." "I did," Valen answered softly. "I stopped being apart from it." The shadows lengthened. The candlelight dimmed. Valen's skin began to ripple, something underneath pushing outward, writhing like a heartbeat. The boy gasped as a long black hand pressed through Valen's chest from the inside. The hand was not human. It was small, wiry, skin stretched tight like a bat's wing. The thing that crawled out sat upon his shoulder, its body round, its mouth filled with needle teeth. It grinned. The Alp had worn his shape all along. "I am hunger made flesh. The weight upon every sinner's chest. I do not come from the dark. You breathe me into being." Isabel stumbled backward, crossing herself, weeping. "I only wanted to live. I only." The creature leaned close, its face inches from hers. And you killed to do it. The air shimmered. Isabel's breath began to pour from her mouth in long, misty ribbons. They wound toward the Alp, feeding it, brightening its eyes. She collapsed, pale, lips blue. Tomas screamed and swung the cross at the creature. The Alp caught it mid-air. The iron hissed in its hand, burning the skin, yet it only smiled. Faith, it whispered, burns sweeter than blood. It dropped the cross and turned to the boy. You are pure still. But purity is lonely. Would you like to see them again? The ones who burned? Your mother, your father. Tomas shook his head, tears freezing on his face. They wouldn't want me to breathe your air. The Alp tilted its head. Then you will choke on your own. Tomas fell to his knees, gasping, frost blooming across his lips. But before the final breath left him, a new voice cut through the storm, weak, trembling, but human. Elric. The scribe stood at the doorway, ink still dried on his skin like scripture. Enough, he rasped. Take me. End it. The Alp turned. You would give breath freely? A story must end, Elric whispered. Even a cursed one. It turns out Elric didn't die, he was only comatose. The creature grinned, sliding from Valen's shoulder, crawling onto Elric's chest like a cat finding its throne. Then let it be written, it said. The thing climbed onto his chest, limbs folding with insect grace. Its face shifted, first his wife's, then Alaric's, then the child he never saved. Elric did not flinch. He only closed his eyes and exhaled. The candle flames bent backward. Frost leapt from the walls in veins of white fire. The Alp inhaled deeply, and the chapel doors slammed shut with a sound like thunder underwater. Then let it be written, it murmured. Elric's final breath left him, soft, almost peaceful. His quill hand twitched once, dragging a single line across the parchment at his feet. When the light died, nothing remained but ink, snow, and silence. Morning never truly came to Eichenwald. The sky lingered in a half-light, neither night nor day, a frozen hour stretched thin as glass. The chapel door creaked open, though no hand touched it. Snow drifted inside, quiet as breath. Tomas lay where he had fallen, frost threading his eyelashes. For a long time, nothing moved. Then, a twitch. A shallow inhale. A wisp of white fog left his lips. He stirred, eyes fluttering open to a world muted and gray. Bodies surrounded him, still, peaceful, dusted in pale light. Elric's quill rested beside the parchment, its tip buried in ice. Tomas rose slowly. The air was heavy, pressing on his chest. He looked toward the altar, where the candles still burned, their flames blue and whispering. A voice, faint, familiar, echoed through the silence. Not from above. From the frost itself. Do not fear, child. Every story ends with a breath. Tomas' lips parted, trembling. His breath came in short, visible bursts. The mist that escaped him did not fade. It hung before him, swirling, shaping itself into something that watched him back. Eyes opened within the fog. Human. Knowing. Elric's eyes. The boy stepped back, but there was nowhere to run. Outside, the village stood still, every window clouded with frozen breath, every house silent as a tomb. He stumbled through the snow, calling for anyone, but only his own voice answered, and even that seemed borrowed. The wind exhaled across the rooftops, carrying a whisper that did not belong to the living. Every story of the Alp ends the same. Tomas stopped. His breath slowed. The mist thickened, coiling around him like smoke seeking a lung. The one who breathes last becomes its next voice. The boy gasped, a final, thin thread of air leaving his throat. The wind caught it, pulling it upward, twisting it into the shape of a man's shadow against the dawn. The chapel bell tolled once, backward. And Eichenwald slept again.
That's the end of today's tale. If you liked it, Tap that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you'll be the first to hear the next dark story I uncover.